Welcome to Talent on Tap. I am Brendan Brown. I lead the recruiting team here at LinkedIn and want to welcome Jamie Kerr to the show. Topic today is building a strong partnership with your legal department so we can have better recruiting outcomes. And it's a topic that I am excited to dig into because I think more than ever, we as recruiting professionals need to be thoughtful about these topics and most importantly, need to understand them in depth. And Jamie, talk to us a little bit about who you are and your title.
I am a director of employment law here at LinkedIn. I work with a number of client groups, and one of my favorite client groups is your talent acquisition team.
There have been some things that have changed. I mean, there's been a shifting landscape for sure, new developments in the world of talent, no doubt, in the past 3-4 years. What are some of those things that have changed so much so that the partnership between talent and legal needs to be a priority?
The volume of applicants that companies are getting is so high. And at the same time, companies are really interested in sort of like broadening their aperture. They're interested in creating diverse slates of candidates to review. And at the same time, this really sort of introspective look by companies at, are we finding the right people for the right job? And how can we do that most effectively and fairly? You get all these sort of different strategies that might spring up. You get vendors that spring up that want to sort of help you solve those problems.
So let's take a couple of those topics and maybe kind of dig into them a little bit. So, and they're definitely connected, but on the AI front, and I'm sure there's recruiters that are watching this and they're pumped about the next whiz-bang tool that's out there.
The one thing that I would say is that, there's a lot of opportunities to integrate, AI tools, machine learning tools into various HR processes. And the one place we're seeing it more than any place else is in sort of recruiting and hiring. On LinkedIn, you'll see a bunch of ads for a bunch of different vendors that say, hey, we can use machine learning to help you find the right candidate. And I think that in a lot of ways, and sometimes the vendors say this themselves, we can help you, prevent bias, prevent human bias by using our tool. And it sounds really great. And it's not to say that it couldn't be really great, but there can be really serious unintended consequences that can cause legal liability, because what happens is if you use a screening tool and you sort of say, okay, we're going to put everybody through this system and everybody who passes it is going to go on to the next round, everybody who fails it is just going to be rejected, you are running into a host of legal issues. And those include discrimination. Totally neutral tool. So you're like, we're taking the bias out, right? Yeah. But in fact, there is this whole area of discrimination that you and I have talked about, which is disparate impact discrimination in the U.S. is what it's called, and in other places sometimes called indirect. And it's about basically the situation where you put people through a screening tool, and one group of people, say men, passes at a certain rate, say 70%, and perhaps a group of people that are women pass at a different rate. If you compare those two rates and the group that passes at the lower rate is passing at, this is a little bit math, but the group that passes at a lower rate is passing at less than 80% of the higher rate, that's what we call like adverse impact. You hear people talk about adverse impact? Yeah. That's kind of the math behind adverse impact. And when you get to that threshold and you run a tool and adverse impact occurs, that's effectively evidence of discrimination. And then the employer has to say, well, wait, let me explain. Let me defend myself and say why it's not. And there are processes that you can put in place on the front end that can help you potentially, avoid that as an outcome. But you have to be thinking about it on the front end. You can't just be saying, oh, let's plug in the tool and use it tomorrow.
Yeah. So the 80% of four-fifths rule. What does it mean in terms of things to be mindful of if you're needing to course correct? One, get your head around this 4/5 rule.
From a purely legal perspective, the answer to that is if adverse impact exists, you've effectively discriminated unless you can establish that this was a business necessity and there was no less discriminatory alternative to it.
Got it.
And so that's why I said you need to be thinking about this on the front end before you're in a place where you're even running that analysis, right?
Advice more broadly on diversity and diversity recruiting. Your thoughts in terms of what are the couple, three things start if you haven't, or continue to think about the following areas that are really, really important?
I think kind of the most important thing is To remember, this is what I call the big diversity rule, which the big diversity rule is that you don't make decisions based on someone's race or gender or age or other protected classes. And that is even if you're thinking of it in a positive way, right? It's about creating an environment, a process, a structure where you are able to look at a diverse slate of candidates and evaluate their strengths and their weaknesses and pick the person who is going to be able to contribute in the best way. And I sometimes get the question, like, what if you have two exactly equal, identical candidates, and then can you use their race or their gender as a tiebreaker? And my response to that is always, there is no such thing as two exactly equal and identical candidates.
True.
They're individuals. They're more than a name and a label of gender or race. So look at those two individuals. What are they bringing to the table that you need? What can they add to your team?
One thing I think a lot about is, do people know what they can and can't say, even just in the course of their day?
The legal answer is almost always the same as the human answer in this context,
Okay.
which is nobody wants to be seen as only a woman or only a Hispanic candidate or only a Black or African American candidate. Nobody wants to be chosen or not chosen for anything related to those characteristics. And it also happens to be against the law, which is, important to me, to all of us.
Thank you for your time, Jamie. For all those recruiters out there, early and often is key when it comes to partnering with your legal department. Whether you're at a startup or at a huge company, there is opportunity to change what you're doing to deepen that partnership, and as well make sure that those around you, if you're a recruiting manager, you're training up your team, you're understanding the whys behind choices that are being made related to tools and processes, and that you make this a priority. And in my experience, there's no destination. There's not a number of meetings that Jamie and I have, and then we're at a place where we're done. This is something that needs to be an ongoing commitment and an ongoing partnership for you in your recruiting career now and in perpetuity. So we'll see you next time on Talent on Tap. Thanks for joining us.